Welcome to Deep Dive Lab, where we break down and dissect cutting-edge scientific research, from advanced biomedical technologies to breakthroughs in AI, materials science, chemistry, and physics, all told as compelling, easy-to-follow stories. And today, I want you to imagine something for a second. Imagine you're trying to fix the air quality in a massive, sprawling mansion.
Okay, I'm picturing it. Lots of rooms.
Right, lots of rooms, tons of space, and you basically have two options. You can buy these classic sort of vintage air purifiers that just run slow and steady, or you can plug in a bunch of brand new high-speed turbo purifiers.
Well, I mean, if it's a massive mansion, you probably want the turbo ones.
Naturally, right. If you're trying to clean the air, you definitely want to know which one is actually doing the job faster.
Oh, absolutely. It would completely change how you plan out your whole ventilation strategy. You can't just guess when the stakes are that high.
Exactly. Which brings us to a really strange, massive scale question we are looking at today. When you look at two vast forests from space, and one was deliberately planted by humans, while the other grew completely naturally in the wild.
Right, the vintage versus the turbo purifiers.
Yeah. Which one is actually breathing in more carbon dioxide? Which one is growing its leaves faster? And even weirder, why does a forest's diet actually change as it gets older?
It's wild because this has been a massive puzzle for ecologists. For decades, I mean, the scientific community operated under the assumption that these forests behaved more or less the same way when it came to capturing carbon.
Just a tree is a tree, basically.
Exactly. But recent data has completely flipped that idea on its head. It reveals that trees have a very specific life cycle that fundamentally dictates how they interact with our atmosphere.
And scientists eventually discovered an unexpected answer that involves a sort of biological midlife crisis for trees. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, to really wrap our heads around the scale of the problem scientists were trying to solve, we have to look at China. China currently has the world's largest planted forest area.
Wow, really? The largest?
The largest. We are talking about over 90 million hectares of planted trees. That is an area larger than the entire state of Texas.
That's just an unfathomable amount of trees.
It's massive. It makes up over a third of the nation's total forest land, and they've been executing this monumental ecological restoration project to combat desertification, to restore broken ecosystems, and crucially, to capture atmospheric carbon.
So 90 million hectares is a staggering amount of green space to just add to the map. But knowing that those wild forests are messy while the planted ones are highly organized, I mean, that creates a massive headache for the scientists building global climate models, right?
Oh, totally. Because how do you map the carbon capture of a country if you can't even rely on a square mile of trees acting like a typical square mile of trees?
Right, like they just aren't the same.
Exactly. And that was the fatal flaw in the dominant climate models. They're called Dynamic Global Vegetation Models, or DGVMs. International policies essentially treated all forests exactly the same.
So the models just, what, scan a map and say, yep, that's green?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Models would scan a satellite grid, see a dense patch of green, and just calculate the baseline carbon absorption for a generic forest.
Basically assuming that if a tree has leaves and a trunk, it's running the exact same math equation on the atmosphere.
Right, which scientists on the ground knew didn't make intuitive sense. Because, planted forests are heavily managed.
Like, they have a very specific goal.
Exactly. They're usually composed of specific, fast-growing species like certain eucalyptus or pine varieties, and they are often given resource supplementation early on. Natural forests, on the other hand, are wildly diverse.
Just structurally complex and messy.
Incredibly messy. The canopy heights are staggered, the root systems are tangled, and there are hundreds of competing species all fighting for resources.
Right. But the real barrier was actually proving that these two distinct types of forests behave differently on a global scale. Because you can't just look at an average of all natural forests and compare it to an average of all planted forests.
Right, the data would just be a mess.
Yeah, it's like trying to figure out if a new diet or a new exercise routine works better, but you're comparing a 20-year-old triathlete living in sunny California to a 60-year-old couch potato in a snowy cabin.
That is a perfect analogy.
You just can't trust the results. The environments and the ages are so entirely different that any data you pull from that comparison is essentially useless. You need an apples-to-apples comparison.
Yeah, and the scientific term for that headache is confounding variables. If you just average the data, your results are instantly corrupted by differences in, well, the local climate, the soil composition, the elevation.
And the age of the trees, right?
Most importantly, the age, yeah. State-of-the-art models completely neglected the age of the forests. Essentially, masking the true biological dynamics of how these ecosystems breathe and grow over time.
So how did scientists figure this out? This is where the story gets interesting. Because untangling millions of acres of forest data sounds completely impossible.
It does, but a massive collaborative team of researchers managed to untangle this. They were led by Dr. Yuhong Luo, working across institutions like Peking University, the National University of Singapore, and Inner Mongolia University.
Wow, a serious dream team.
Absolutely. They published this incredibly detailed study in 2026 in the journal Geophysical Research Letters, and their methodology is what really makes this a breakthrough.
So what did they actually do?
Well, they didn't just look at a few plots of land. They looked at satellite data spanning from the year 2000 all the way to 2022.
Okay, wait, what exactly are the satellites looking for? Because they aren't just taking standard photographs, right?
No, not at all. They're measuring something called the Leaf Area Index, or LAI.
Leaf Area Index, got it.
Essentially, satellites use specialized sensors to look at how much visible light is being absorbed by the Earth versus how much near-infrared light is bouncing back into space.
Oh, okay, so it's about light reflection.
Right, because healthy, dense leaves absorb visible light for photosynthesis, but they reflect near-infrared light. So by measuring that ratio, the satellite can calculate exactly how many layers of leaves are stacked up over a specific patch of ground.
Okay, so if a forest is adding more leaves and getting denser, its near-infrared reflection goes up and the LAI trend spikes.
You've got it. That's exactly how they measure growth from space.
But to get back to the triathlete and the couch potato,
Yeah.
how did they actually find that apples-to-apples comparison? You mentioned they had 90 million hectares to sort through,
Yeah, so they use a statistical technique called propensity score matching.
which I read about this is basically a highly specific dating app for forests.
It is a great analogy, though the math behind this dating app is intensely rigorous. The algorithm doesn't just look for a casual similarity.
It's not just swiping right on a nice-looking tree.
Definitely not. It calculates a mathematical distance between data points. So imagine you have a 1-kilometer pixel of a planted pine forest on a slight hill in a rainy province.
Okay, I'm with you.
The algorithm acts like a matchmaker, swiping through millions of pixels of natural forests until it finds one that shares the exact same climate profile, the exact same soil moisture, the exact same elevation, the exact same slope, and the exact same age.
Oh, wow, so it pairs them up perfectly.
Right. It pairs them up so tightly that the only remaining difference between them is their origin. One was planted by humans, and one grew naturally from the wild seed bank.
That is incredibly clever. How many matches did they actually find?
They successfully matched over 641,000 pairs of forest pixels using 13 distinct biophysical variables.
641,000 perfect pairs. That is mind-blowing.
It really is. But even with those perfect matches, they still had to figure out why the leaf growth was happening. To do that, they brought in an advanced AI technique called XGBoost.
Hold on. Advanced machine learning is sometimes used as a bit of a black box term in these papers. What is XGBoost actually doing with all those matched pairs?
Good point. Think of XGBoost as an incredibly sophisticated process of elimination. It built thousands of decision trees. Imagine asking 10,000 different analysts to look at the data, and each analyst learns from the mistakes of the one before them.
Okay, so it's a super analyst.
Exactly. The AI takes a paired forest and asks, did this leaf growth happen because of a particularly rainy year? No. Was it because the temperature spiked? No.
Was it because the atmospheric carbon dioxide increased?
Yes. It isolates the exact driver of the growth, completely separating the effect of climate change from the effect of rising CO2 levels.
The methodology is brilliant, but the findings are the real wow moment of this deep dive.
Oh, absolutely. The numbers are staggering.
When they looked at the national scale, just the raw unmatched data, planted forests increased their leaf area a staggering 65.8% faster than natural forests over that 22-year period.
Which is a massive number that looks great on a headline. But remember, that includes all those confounding variables.
Right. That is the raw triathlete versus the couch potato data.
Exactly. It's not the full story.
But then they look at the matched pairs. The perfect apples-to-apples dating app matches. When perfectly matched for age, environment, climate, everything, the planted forests still grew 4.6% faster than their natural twins.
And what's fascinating here is the underlying biological mechanism behind that 4.6% advantage.
Right. Why are they winning?
It fundamentally comes down to two things, age and diet. The first factor is that planted forests in China are overwhelmingly younger. The average planted forest in the study was about 34 years old, whereas the natural forests averaged 57 years old.
Ah, so they literally have the aggressive energy of youth on their side.
Exactly. And because they are young, and because they are often intensively managed species chosen specifically for their growth rates, they are absolutely gorging on the rising levels of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere.
They're just eating all of it.
Yeah, this is known as the CO2 fertilization effect.
Okay, we need to dive into the mechanics of this effect because it fundamentally shifts how you think about pollution.
It really does.
We usually just think of CO2 as a greenhouse gas trapping heat like a blanket over the earth, but to a tree, it's a buffet.
It is the primary raw material for photosynthesis. Leaves have these tiny pores called stomata. They open them up to suck in CO2, but every time they open their stomata, they lose water.
So it's a trade-off, food for water.
Right. But when human activity pumps massive excess CO2 into the air, the concentration is so high that the trees don't have to leave their stomata open as long.
Oh, I see.
They can gulp down the carbon they need to build leaves and wood rapidly while actually conserving water.
That makes total sense. They are getting more calories for less effort.
The XGBoost analysis revealed just how powerful this is. Elevated CO2 concentration explained a massive 88.5% of the observed leaf area increase in planted forests.
88.5%. So this extra atmospheric CO2 is basically supercharging their growth.
Supercharging is the perfect word for it.
The study noted this is especially true in evergreen and mixed forests. They are acting exactly like those high-speed turbo air purifiers we talked about at the start.
Yeah, evergreen trees, in particular, keep their leaves year-round. Because they never drop your canopy, they continuously take advantage of that extra atmospheric carbon.
So they don't have to start over every year.
Exactly. They compound those CO2 benefits over multiple growing seasons without having to waste energy rebuilding their entire solar panel system from scratch every spring, like deciduous trees do.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because this hypergrowth, this turbo purifier phase, it doesn't last forever.
No, it doesn't.
The planted trees eventually hit a biological wall.
This is the midlife crisis the researchers uncovered. The data show that right around age 30 to 40, the growth rate of these planted forests drops sharply. The CO2-driven fertilization effect essentially stalls out.
Wait, if I have a potted plant on my windowsill and I give it endless sunlight and water, it doesn't just decide to stop growing.
Right, but that's a controlled environment.
Exactly. If CO2 is plant food, and there is more CO2 in the air right now than at any point in human history, why would a 40-year-old tree suddenly refuse to eat it?
Well, because your potted plant is likely getting fresh soil or fertilizer drops from you. A forest has to work with what's locked in the earth.
Oh, right, the soil itself.
Yeah. As these trees mature and their canopy closes up, blocking light to the forest floor, their biological priorities have to shift. A tree cannot survive on carbon alone. To build a protein, to build DNA, to sustain a massive trunk, a tree needs other nutrients, specifically nitrogen and phosphorus from the soil.
Ah, so they run out of the side dishes.
Basically, yeah.
They have all the carbon main courses they could ever want floating in the air, but there is no nitrogen left in the dirt to balance the meal.
That is perfectly put. The technical term is progressive nutrient limitation. Monoculture planted forests, where millions of the same type of tree are planted at the exact same time, all hit this wall together.
Because they all want the exact same nutrients at the exact same time.
Exactly. They exhaust the readily available nitrogen and phosphorus in the topsoil. So what does a 40-year-old pine tree do? It realizes it can't keep building leaves up top. Instead, it takes that carbon it absorbed and shifts its investment below ground.
It changes strategies from vertical leafy expansion to underground resource extraction.
Exactly. It starts growing deeper, denser root systems, and more importantly, it starts trading with fungi.
Wait, trading with fungi?
Yeah. Beneath the soil, there are vast networks of mycorrhizal fungi. These fungi are incredible at mining solid rock and deep dirt for phosphorus and nitrogen. But they can't photosynthesize.
They need sugar.
Exactly. So the aging tree takes the sugars it makes from the atmospheric CO2 and essentially pays the fungi in exchange for nitrogen.
That is incredible. The whole economic engine of the tree moves underground.
It completely shifts focus, yeah.
But that brings up a huge question. If the fast-growing planted forests stall out at age 40 to focus on their roots, do the messy, slow-growing natural forests ever catch up?
They do. And this might be the most crucial finding of the entire study. The researchers tracked something called the crossover age.
The crossover age, what does that mean?
This is the specific point in time where the natural forest actually surpasses the planted forest in its age-related leaf growth. Depending on the specific type of tree and the region, this crossover happens anywhere between 21 and 53 years of age.
So the natural forests eventually win the race.
They absolutely win the endurance race.
Mm.
If we look at the marathon analogy, natural forests are built for the long haul because of their complex biodiversity.
Unlike the plantations.
Right. Imagine a 50-year-old monoculture pine plantation. It is often quiet, the canopy is uniform, the underbrush is sparse, and the soil is tapped out because every single tree has been competing for the exact same nutrients at the exact same soil depth for 5 decades.
It sounds stagnant.
It is stagnant. Now compare that to a 50-year-old natural forest. You have towering oaks, mid-level maples, low-lying shrubs, and ferns.
It's chaotic.
Chaotic, but brilliant. Their roots are at completely different depths, extracting different nutrients. Certain plants in the mix, like legumes, actually pull nitrogen from the air and fix it back into the soil, acting like natural fertilizers for their neighbors.
Wow, so they feed the forests.
Exactly. This dynamic, layered complexity allows the natural forest to sustain its growth and its carbon capture over a much, much longer timeline.
The natural forest doesn't hit the midlife crisis because the ecosystem as a whole is constantly refreshing its own nutrient supply. So what does this all mean? Let's zoom out for a second.
Sure.
If you're listening to this on your commute or while walking the dog, you might be thinking, okay, fascinating tree biology, but how does this impact me and the future of the planet?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, this discovery completely rewrites how we predict the severity of climate change. Remember those DGVMs, those global climate models we talked about at the beginning?
The models that assumed a tree is a tree, completely ignoring age and origin.
Right. Because those models ignore the age of the trees, and whether they were planted or natural, they're currently broken.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they are vastly underestimating the aggressive carbon-capturing power of young planted forests. In fact, this study showed that 11 out of 14 major global vegetation models completely miss the magnitude of this early-stage CO2 fertilization effect.
Which means our math on global warming is flawed.
Completely flawed.
If we don't know exactly how much carbon our current forests are eating out of the atmosphere today, we can't accurately predict how hot the Earth is going to get a decade from now.
Exactly. But the good news is, this research provides the exact mathematical formula needed to fix those next-generation ecosystem models.
So we can plug this data back in.
Yeah. By feeding the algorithms the actual age, the specific species, and the management history of the forests, we can calibrate our climate predictions to be vastly more accurate.
It also serves as a very clear instruction manual for how humans should be fighting climate change going forward, right? I mean, planted forests are basically the sprinters of climate mitigation.
They absolutely are.
They are incredible tools for rapid, short-term carbon capture. If we need to pull carbon out of the air right now, planting a fast-growing pine or eucalyptus is highly effective. For the first 30 years, it just inhales CO2 like a vacuum cleaner.
But we cannot rely entirely on sprinters to run a marathon. We cannot just replace ancient natural forests with endless rows of monoculture plantations.
Because of the nutrient wall.
Right. If we do, we might get a quick 30-year burst of carbon absorption, but we will sacrifice long-term ecosystem stability, vital biodiversity, and soil health.
Because once those monoculture plantations hit 40, they hit that midlife crisis, they stall out, and we are right back where we started.
And that's why the future of ecological restoration is pointing toward a concept called close-to-nature forestry.
Close-to-nature forestry, I like the sound of that. What is it?
This approach suggests that when we plant new forests to capture carbon, we shouldn't just plant one single species in perfectly straight lines. We need to intentionally mix species, plant at staggered intervals, and mimic natural biodiversity.
Trying to engineer the best of both worlds.
Exactly.
You get the rapid carbon absorption of a young, managed forest, combined with the long-term, multi-generational survival of a diverse natural ecosystem.
It's about designing ecosystems that are resilient enough to handle a rapidly changing climate, pest invasions, and droughts, while still providing that crucial carbon sink we desperately need to buy ourselves time.
Okay, so let's summarize the journey we've been on today. We started with the mystery of two forests viewed from space, trying to figure out which one was breathing in more air.
The turbo versus the vintage.
Right. And we've learned that right now, young planted forests in places like China are absolutely outgreening natural ones. They are growing their leaf area significantly faster, largely thanks to the energy of youth and their ability to gorge on the excess CO2 we've pumped into the atmosphere.
But we also learned that biology always demands a trade-off. That turbocharged growth exhausts the soil's resources, causing the planted trees to hit a nutrient wall around age 40. At that crossover point, the slow, steady, and complex biodiversity of natural forests eventually overtakes them, winning the long game.
It's an incredible story about how science is showing us that nature actually values both the energetic, hungry burst of youth and the enduring, resilient complexity of age.
It's quite poetic, honestly.
It really is. We really can't hack our way out of global warming with just one type of tree or one quick technological fix. A healthy planet requires the full, messy, diverse ecosystem working together over decades and centuries.
This raises an important question, though. We know these millions of hectares of young planted forests are doing the heavy lifting for carbon capture right now. But what happens tomorrow?
Exactly. If these massive planted forests hit a biological wall at 40 years old, how will the forests we are planting today reshape our global climate map by the time they hit retirement age in 2060? Will our soil have anything left to give them?
It's a profound thought. The climate solutions we are putting in the ground today will have very different complex needs in just a few decades.
It's definitely something to mull over next time you take a walk in the woods and notice the different layers of the canopy above you. Thank you for joining us on this journey today. There is always more to learn, and the world is always more complex and more fascinating than it first appears. Thanks for joining the Deep Dive Lab, and be sure to follow and subscribe for more fascinating science stories unfolding right in front of us.